I looked at this video footage from the shooting that was in Columbus, Ohio. I looked at the body cam footage, I looked at the surveillance footage from across the street, and I think it's everything you need to know about this case. In case you were wondering what I thought about it, you can see on this video. So let me show you these two different angles, and then I'll tell you what I think.
What's going on? Hey, get down, get down.
There was a U.S. Supreme Court case just back in 2018 where they took up a case from California out of the crazy Ninth Circus where the issue is you had a police shooting of this woman who was apparently mentally ill, and she was holding a knife, and she was in close proximity to a third party, and she was shot by the officers. I believe she survived, and there was a 1983 lawsuit. And basically, the Supreme Court said it was a good shoot in that case. And this was over qualified immunity. But they said because she had a knife in her hand, she refused the orders to drop the knife, given the proximity to a third party who could be stabbed to death as far as the shooter knows. That is an immediate threat of somebody's physical safety, and that would justify, if those are the facts, that would justify deadly force. So that's U.S. Supreme Court really support for the police officer that pulled the trigger in this case. You look at the moment of where force is employed. So the time that the shots were fired. It doesn't really matter what happened before with the 911 call. It doesn't matter who was the initial aggressor, who was at fault. It doesn't matter what the police officer's implicit bias is. It really, none of that matters. Nothing else matters, because when you focus on the moment that force was employed, you can see that there's an immediate threat to somebody's serious safety, or most likely somebody's life, given the fact that this was like a butcher knife. So the law is very clear that an officer may use deadly force when that officer has probable cause to believe that a suspect poses a serious threat of physical harm either to the police officer or to others. That's Supreme Court, Tennessee versus Garner, which, by the way, also allows, whether you may not believe this, actually allows police officers to shoot a fleeing felon in the back. Now, not a good idea to test that out, but that's Tennessee versus Garner. Now, probable cause to believe that the suspect poses a threat to somebody's life. Here you have a knife, and the girl, was within striking distance. So it's really not even a close case. And again, you can look at Casella versus Hughes, 2018, U.S. Supreme Court, and that was a California case originally. And where I practice in the Fourth Circuit, there are lots of shooting cases, a lot of shooting case law involving knives. And where you get into the gray areas is where the person who was shot with a knife in their hand, maybe they don't drop the knife when they're ordered to drop the knife, they get shot. The mere possession of the weapon in the hand isn't necessarily enough, especially in the Fourth Circuit. They've held that the mere possession of a deadly weapon by an individual did not justify the use of deadly force. So if a person has a knife and they're not in proximity to somebody to use it immediately, they can't just be shot because they refused the order to drop the knife. You're going to have to add more facts, such as the exact facts that you had in this case. And I don't think there's any court in the land that wouldn't find what you see on this video reasonable. And the fact that you have people like LeBron James that come out and basically threaten this police officer. And what does that do? Ironically, this is the same analysis, really, that we all, as free, supposedly citizens of America, get to ourselves rely on. This is the natural right of self-defense. You can use deadly force to defend yourself or others. You don't have to be a police officer. If there's an immediate threat and it's reasonable to, it can't just be a paranoid threat. It has to be an objectively reasonable threat. You're allowed to defend yourself with firearms or with a knife or whatever deadly weapon you can get your hands on. That's not just police officers. So if you're going to water that down and restrict that in the name of politics or in the name of race pimping, to fit some sort of social justice agenda, who is that going to harm? That's going to harm people who may need to assert their own right of self-defense at some point in the future. You're also, when you attempt to take away the due process rights of a police officer that's involved in a shooting such as this, who is that going to hurt? That's going to hurt people who are going to, face judicial or criminal justice scrutiny in the future. You don't want to deprive due process, the presumption of innocence and all that from police officers if that's going to result in you or your family or your friends not being able to assert those own rights in the future because you set a precedence. So it really doesn't matter who called 911. It could have been either of those girls. It doesn't matter. I mean, if you place a police officer or just your everyday armed concealed carry person in a situation where there's one person with a butcher knife going after another person, if they save that person's life by shooting the bad guy or the bad girl, that is going to be a good shoot, police officer or not. And the scary thing is, take away the body cam, take away the video from across the street. That opens the door for people like LeBron James who really don't care whether or not it was a justified shoot under case law or not. They don't care. It's about their politics. It's about their agenda. And that would open the door for people like that to lie, to misrepresent the facts. I mean, look at how they're able to create this outrage when there's a video of it showing that it's justified. What would they do without the video? So it's scary times that we're in. I think the important takeaways are, one, that it doesn't, the other facts don't matter. It's just a knife, the manner in which it's in the process of being used, and it's the proximity to a potential victim of that knife. And that's pretty much all it comes down to. If you take away some of that, it could be different, okay? If you have somebody who's standing there in the street after the officer arrives and she's holding the knife, but she's not chasing anybody, she's not in the process of trying to stab anybody with it. She's just standing there. They say, drop the knife, and there's nobody in close proximity, and they shoot. That is a much different case. That's a much different case. And especially if it's this, if it's a 16-year-old girl, they don't have any information that she is a, dangerous felon who's been in prison before and actually has a conviction for killing somebody with a knife before. I mean, you'd have to add different facts. I mean, this literally, you could take anybody with that knife and it's going to be a good shoot at that moment. And it's just the immediacy of a threat there. Or you could take the knife and replace it with like a sub sandwich or something, and now you have a mistake situation. So you could have all sorts of different gray areas, but this absolutely is not a gray area. I mean, it's completely clear, and I can tell you that the case law is, it's just voluminous to support the shooting that took place in this situation, and that's good for all of us, not just police officers, because that is our natural right of self-defense. You don't want to take that away from anybody. not police officers, not individual citizens. I mean, that is the right of self-defense. So those are my thoughts. I mean, there's not a whole lot to say about it. If you want to read up more about it, again, the case is Casella versus Hughes, 2018, U.S. Supreme Court case. Another basic case of shooting cases is Tennessee versus Garner, again, another Supreme Court case. So it's finally Friday, and it's about that time of the day. It's been a long week, and I wish you guys a happy weekend.